What is inflation and explain each type of inflation and causes why it happened. Inflation is the rate at which the general price level of goods and services in an economy rises, causing purchasing power to decrease. Essentially, when inflation occurs, each unit of currency buys fewer goods and services, which affects the cost of living. Inflation can occur for several reasons. It is typically measured by indicators like the consumer price index or the produce price index. So, there are six types of inflation. First is demand pull inflation. This type occurs when the demand for goods and services exceeds supply. This can happen when there is an increase in consumer spending, government spending, or investment. For example, during economic booms, people tend to spend more, leading to higher demand and thus pushing prices up. Costs push inflation. This happens when the cost of products rises, leading businesses to pass this cost on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Costs include increased prices for raw materials, wages, and fuel. A classic example when oil prices rise, which increases transportation costs, impacting the cost of goods. Third type of an inflation is built-in inflation, sometimes called as wage price inflation. This occurs when workers demand higher wages to keep up with the cost of living. If employees meet these demands, they might increase prices to cover the additional costs, creating a cycle where inflation continues to build up. Fourth one is hyperinflation. This is an extremely high and typically accelerating inflation rate, often exceeding 50% per month. Hyperinflation can be caused by factors like rapid money printing, economic crisis, and loss of confidence in the currency. This level of inflation can be devastating to an economy. Stagflation. Inflation. This is a combination of stagnant economic growth, high unemployment, and high inflation. Stagflation is challenging to resolve because measures to reduce inflation often grow, slow economic growth, further worsening unemployment. Deflation is the opposite of inflation, where the general price levels falls. This can lead to reduced spending as people anticipate lower prices in the future, which can cause economic stagnation. This inflation is a decrease in the rate of inflation, meaning prices are still rising but at a slower pace. For example, the Philippines, we are at this inflation. At what particular year and whose administration in Philippine history wherein inflation is at its lowest and highest rate? What rate is that? What might be the cause of it? To, dep- to, to determine the years with the highest and lowest inflation rates in the Philippines, their causes looks like specific periods in recent history. Highest inflation in 1984, under the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos, inflation reached a record high of about 50.3%. That was primarily due to economic mismanagement, corruption, and a debt crisis that left the Philippines unable to manage its foreign obligations. Additionally, political instability and capital flight contribute to this sharp rise in prices. Lowest inflation under President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in 2000. The Philippines experienced an inflation as low as 2.8. This low inflation was attributed to effective fiscal policies and a stable economic environment. During these periods, structural reforms and fiscal consolidations helped keep inflation under control. In relation to hyperinflation, summarize what happened in Zimbabwe's economy from early 2000 onwards. Zimbabwe experienced one of the most severe hyperinflation episodes in modern history, which started to escalate in the early 2000s and peaked around 2008 to 2009. By late 2008, inflation in Zimbabwe was estimated at around 89.76 trillion percent, essentially making the Zimbabwe dollar worthless. Costs and key events. So, excessive money printing. The Zimbabwe government, led by President Robert Mugabe, responded to economic problems by printing money to financing budget deficits and fund public programs. This flooded the economy with currency, drastically reducing its value. Land reform policies. The government controversial land reform policies, which include the seizure of white-owned farms, which without compensation disrupted agricultural productivity. This led to a sharp decline in food production, shortage, and reliance of imports. Loss of investors' confidence. As the economic crisis worsened, investors lost confidence in Zimbabwe economy, capital flight, and reduced foreign investment compounded problems as the sanctions imposed by Western countries. Erosions of public confidence in currency. As inflation skyrocketed, people lost faith in Zimbabwe dollar. Eventually, the country abandoned its currency in favor of foreign currencies, including the US dollars, to stabilize the economy. This period of hyperinflation in Zimbabwe is an example of how a combination of poor policy decisions, lack of productivity, and excessive money supply can destabilize an economy, leading to an uncontrollable rise in prices.